was a Miss Davis over at Raccoon Ford, and she was having a baby, and my mother was having me. And he said he spent time with her, and he'd run back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Finally, she finished. She had twins, but her twins weighed as much as I did all put together. I weighed 10.5 pounds. She said, and you know what she said when she told me later? That I was the ugliest thing she'd ever seen in her life. So she said, you've just rolled some fat. But she said, you were broken up with hives from the top of your head to the bottom of your feet. So it was a funny thing, but that's why, that you asked me when I was born, that's when I was born. I had an older sister and an older brother and a younger sister. So then all of us was born at home. And I had the best grandparents in the world. I certainly did. And not only that, I had the best parents in the world too. So, but everybody was poor. There wasn't very many people that had very much of anything. But you know, with everybody was so good with everybody else. If you had something, you shared it with me. Or whatever you had, you shared it with somebody else. So that's what it was.
Yeah, and you kind of used that phrase, it was the worst of times, but it was also the best of times.
Right, that's exactly what I mean. And I said that too, because I think, because people don't do now like they did back those days. Like, people don't look after each other like we did back in those days. I mean, back in those days, if your neighbor had something you needed, they shared it with you. And they sort of looked after everybody around you. But, it was just something that everybody, it was a good time. And like I said, we was poor as a buzzard, but we didn't know it, because we had a wonderful mother and father, and we always had plenty to eat, and was always nice and comfortable. We didn't have exactly what we wanted, but we had what was necessary. If Daddy if you needed shoes, you got shoes. And Daddy not only raised us 4 children, he helped to raise 3 others on the sideline, because their parents all died in '29 with an epidemic of flu, and they would come up, because we lived about a half a mile from Union, from where 522 turns. The house is still there, and the kids would come up and stay with our house in the wintertime so they could go to school. And so, but they had no mother or father. They all died during the flu epidemic. And if they needed clothes, they got clothes too. So whatever you needed, that's what you got. But you was ready to share with everybody. And if we said anything about it, Daddy would say, well, if they haven't got a mother and father, what would you do if you didn't have your parents? That's all he'd say. And we didn't have to, we knew that was all right then. Well, I had wonderful memories of my father. He always wanted us to see what's going on in the world. He was my father was sort of ahead of his time, he really was, because he was quite interested in everything. Already now he was born, he was grown and interested in, when they invented those automobiles, Mr. James Holliday taught my daddy how to be a mechanic. And so he worked with him, and then he ended up having his own garage. He was reading always ahead of the time. He died so young, but he had already read about television. He had read everything that they put out, and he knew it was there. But see, he died before, so he didn't ever get to see a television. But he was so interested in what that television was going to be like. He was always ahead of his time. That's when I lost my best friend, when my father died. To this day, I still say I still lost my best friend. He was always there for me whenever, no matter what trouble I got in, Daddy was ready to help me get out of it. So,
did you get in trouble?
Sometimes. I won't say I didn't. Yes, he did. Okay. Mr. Hudson was the principal, and he was a principal when I started in the 1st grade. He was a principal when I finished. I never had another principal, but nearly all the teachers were local, and they were all good. Let's say they were all excellent teachers. Because if you could, I could tell you, like one of the ones they've been all of the people that graduated along with me, all of them have been really successes in whatever they went out to do.
Did you have a favorite subject in school?
Math. I've always liked math, and I've always liked history. I liked American history, but I didn't care much about ancient history. I said I too can't worry about that. No, so, but I liked American history. I never will forget. It was Sunday afternoon, and all of us had dates. We were the teenagers at that time, and we were having a ball game out in the yard. And Daddy was watching listening to the radio, and he came out and he said, "Oh," he said, "Pearl Harbor's just been bombed." And of course, that was the end of the football. That was the end of the baseball game. So when Daddy said that, Walter says, "Well, I'm still in the Army now." So he started singing, "I'm in the Army now. I'm not. What is it? I'm behind the gun and not the plow," or something like that. He sort of making up a song down as we were playing ball. I graduated from high school in 1943. The World War II started December the 7th of 42, and I graduated in 43. And some of the boys quit and went to join the Navy and the service people, and some of the girls even quit because, you see, we'd been born with no money, and so there was everybody could get a job everywhere. So a lot of them quit and went went to go to work and make some money. So, but I didn't. I stayed. I wanted to graduate first. At least my daddy told me to. He said, "You graduate from high school, and then you can go." So that's exactly what I did. Well, my first job was at Ben Franklin's 5 and 10 right here in Orange. And I was in high school, and I went and rode back and forth with Miss Nell Thompson. I'd go to school and then ride into Orange with her and work till 9 o'clock at night on Friday and Saturday. See, the store stayed open till on Friday night and Saturday night till 8 o'clock, I think it was. I think it was. But then my daddy would come and get me. And he got around at school, and first thing you know, I was skipping classes, and we'd go down to had a little laboratory, what they called it, in the basement of the old buildings all torn down. We'd go down there, and I'd give him a haircut in the basement. But one day, Wick Scott, now, she was Wycliffe Scott. She was a school teacher, and I had been giving her manicures. And so she went by, and I was cutting Hazel Herlock's hair. I'll never forget it. And so she knocked on them. She couldn't. We had the door locked, and she went in there, and I think about half of her hair was cut, and the other half wasn't. But she told me to finish it up. But I wasn't supposed to tell nobody. But don't do that again. So, but she didn't turn me in. Well, I really wanted to be a nurse, and so I didn't have no money. But I graduated in June, and there was a lady came by, and it was a matter of necessity because we all needed haircuts and manicures and stuff, and I just picked it up because I liked doing it, and so people would just come in, and I was in high school, and people went over to help Nell Sneed, and you know what? I just loved what I was doing, and the people were so nice to me. It was like opening up another world for me, and I just liked it so much. I just never left it, and I'm so glad I didn't. I think it turned out to be just what I was supposed to do. I think it used to be what it would be. A murder boy from Brandon Station, and he owned a piece of land right next to where his mother lived, and so we built a house there. And when I built the house, I built the shop right in the house, so I could stay at home, because I knew I wanted children, and I would love, and that's the only thing I could. I said, I don't know 2 things you can do and stay at home is have a little beauty shop in the house or be a seamstress, and I can't even sew a straight line. I have no seamstress whatsoever. So anyway, so that's how that got started. It was this was during the war, and all the guys were all over the world, from during World War II, and I was rooming with her, and she worked at Nell Sneed's beauty shop, and we roomed together. But it was her brother's best friend, and he was in India. He was stationed in India, and so her name was Anna Lee. So Anna Lee would be writing to Virgil, and so at night we would giggle and laugh and write them this, and we just wrote all the silly things that go on in the daytime, and so anyway, and then we went down late. We got off from work, and we were going. War was just over in Europe. It was just over, and so we went to stop the Ritz High Hat restaurant and have supper on the way home because it was hot, and so we went in there, and we were sitting in the back in the corner where the family usually sat. And Anna Lee looked at me and she said, "Oh, Myrtle, don't look up in there." But she said, "Oh, look who's sitting up there. Virgil is up there." And I said, "Virgil, the one we write to all the time?" "Mm-hmm," she said. And I said, "Well, which one is he?" He was a tall, short, and a short one, you know. "Is he the tall one or the short one?" She said, "He's the short one." I said, "You can have him. I'll take the tall one." So that was my husband. So that was just, you know, we just started off that way. That was just, we just met then.
Yeah.
But then we didn't get married for a long time after that. But that's what you asked me, how I met him, that's how. Because Jimmy Dean was in the Army about that time, and he was stationed outside of Washington, and he would come to Warrenton, to Greystone Inn, and Friday nights, and have dances on Friday night. And so we went over there at night. Somebody would take a load of girls, and we'd go just to have something to do. And so we went over there, and guess who was there? There was Virgil and that tall fellow that was with him. And so they asked us to dance and all. And so then Aunt Lee, Virgil wanted to bring us home. Well, Aunt Lee told him, yes, we could come on. He could bring us home. Well, it just so happened that both of them had been drinking and a little too much, and then went away. So we got home, and I got home, and I said to myself, I hope I'll never see that guy again. And I tried to get away, so just I wouldn't, because he would call the house, but I was never there. And finally he quit, but then anyway, we didn't meet again for a long time after that. And so I was just right after my father died, and I was just so shocked. And then he heard about my father dying, and he called me, and he talked with the lady that I roomed with, and so finally he just kept on calling until finally I just said, well, she said, well, for heaven's sakes, either tell him to come home and tell him to shut up or do something. So I told him to come home. And so that was the beginning of it, right back again. But I didn't really date him until after my father died. Skitty, everybody called him Skitty, because when he was a little boy, they said he was real skittish. So they called him Skitty. Skiddy. And that's what he was. Everybody in Brandy called him Skitty. You know anything about Brandy, the Trolleos, all of them went to school together. And so he was Skitty until he died. Yeah, and he was treasurer of the Brandy Fire Department for 30-some years. And so,
So you lived your whole life pretty much in Brandy Station?
Well, I lived 40 years in Brandy Station. Yes, all of our married life we lived in Brandy Station. He worked for the city of Culpeper. He worked, back in those days, Culpeper was a small little town. Now you're gonna think I'm lying now, I know, because they had he worked midnight to 8. They had a couple of big engines over there that generated electricity, and they made all the electricity for the city of Culpeper and for the Baptist home and for the hospital. And he was over to the power plant from midnight to 8 by himself. Not only that, at midnight, they had in the office over to the power plant, they had the police station and everything. When you dial 911, you got the power plant, and my husband was supposed to answer the telephone for head of call, that as well as keep every light in town on. I loved every day I worked, and I will have to tell you, I had the best customers in the whole wide world. And they weren't just customers, they were friends. I mean, just really friends. Because if you could hear what all they have done for me, Edward Orstatius was the Secretary of State under FDR, and he had Horseshoe Farm. And so they would come down from Washington and to the farm. And she would call me on Sunday, and Mondays I'd get up real early because Mr. Tenius had called, and I had to fix their hair before they could go back. Because you see, there was no air conditioning in those days. So there was none whatsoever. So they had to go. By the time they'd been down on the farm, riding horseback and doing all that kind of stuff, they were a mess to go back to Washington. But anyway, and I'll tell you another one I had was Mrs. Admiral Strauss. You know, he was Atomic Energy, and they owned Brandy Rock. I've even gone to the undertakers and fixed them because, you know, it's just it's something when you've been that good a friend, you don't. you want to do it because I felt like it was the last thing I could, anybody that's been that good to me, I feel like at least I could do that. But, you know, the only one that ever bothered me, then, you know, she was married and I think she had the second baby and she died. And so, you know, I went up there, they wanted me if I could fix her hair, and that was the hardest I've ever done. I did her hair from the time they got her. I gave her her first haircut, and I gave her the last one.
Did you ever have any mishaps? Or?
The only time I really, when I thought I was going, I didn't know what I was going to do. You know, thinning shears, you know, people used to be thinning shears. Well, I was, a lady had, it was long hair, thank goodness, and she wanted me to thin it, and I had my scissors out, but I also had the thinning shears out, and I reached down, and instead of looking at them, you know, come to think about it, it might have been this glaucoma then, because I thought I had the scissors, I thought I had the thinning shears, and I had the scissors, and I pulled the hair up and went whack, and it all just came right off in my head, the whole thing. I told her what I did, and she said, I think I got enough, you don't have to, and I said, well, just don't, and so she laughed and she said, but don't do it again, something like that. I mean, that's about it, because it was long back here. So it's where you thin it out across here, and that's what I thinned it out. So at least I thought it was, but I whacked it right off. So anyway, okay. It's short all right, in one piece right straight. I'm sure it stuck out like a hairbrush when it was going out.
Now, how about gossip?
We did not do much gossip. I did not gossip except at one person at a time. If you and I was gossiping, we would talk about it, and so 9 times out of 10, you would tell me not to tell nobody. This is between us, and I did not tell anybody. And so, no, we did not gossip. Everybody, the women was all particular. They said their husbands didn't believe that we could go to the beauty shop that much and not hear any gossip at all. But we never did gossip, you know.
Was there any particular style of hairdressing that you liked and or did not like?
I never did like this that beehive stuff, and you just teased it and stuck straight up. Now that I didn't. I never did even do it because I wasn't interested in it, and none of my customers were either. So, and I had mine done once, and once was enough. Well, I tried to put all of the customers together that enjoyed each other, and they were all friends with each other, and have them all in the beauty shop at the same time, and they had the best time. I mean, you know, on Friday, it was always on Friday, and I said, well, Friday was like having a holiday, because it was all just a visit. I was just doing hair for the fun, but we all visited all the time. I mean, we had some really fun times. It really was. They would tell jokes. So, yeah, we'd tell jokes. Some of them got a little risque. Some of them got a little risque. Some of them got a whole lot. But see, that's the reason I had to choose and who came together, because I didn't want to get to certain ones there, and some of them would be real shocked. But the rest of us was thoroughly enjoying it. My mother was coming in the wintertime. She said, I never heard anybody think they were working and they was having as much fun as you all do out there, because the shop was little, so nobody come just sitting there, just sit with us. So she said we had entirely too much fun. But when after my husband died, I had all these lady friends, and then they liked to travel, and so they would ask me to come and go, and so I just took off, and we would go wherever. I'd go wherever they, Dot Faulkner called me right after my husband died. She asked me, she said, she always called me Mama. She said, did you ever want to go to Alaska? I said, Dot, that's one place I've always wanted to go. I said, I would love to go to Alaska. So the 4 of us went. Well, I've been to Honolulu about 3 or 4, at least 5 or 6 times. But when I go, I stay a week or two, a couple of weeks, because they were born up there. Those girls, see, they've been living there for, well, Lord, they're all dead now. But see them, I've found these 5, 6, 7 maybe time. But they just send me a ticket, well, round trip ticket, all paid. I could go on, come whenever I got ready. So I just.
Now these are the friends who were.
Lived in Honolulu, but they had a place in Richardsville.
Right.
But
So you've known them since Pearl Harbor Day?
yes, yeah, until they're both dead now. Everybody's dead. But Lord have mercy, they certainly were good to me as long as they lived. I lived by myself in Brandon in the house for about 2 years, but then I decided I couldn't afford to live there, let's say it that way, because I didn't have that much money, and so I just lived in an apartment till.
But did you still cut hair?
Oh yes, yeah, okay.
In Culpeper?
Yeah,
Now you have how many children?
Just one little boy. Who the one child has been the joy of my life. And I've always loved children. And then I had Bill, and he's been he was the joy of my life. So anyway, so that's but like I said, and I've had a good life. It's no question. I bet I'm about as lucky an old lady as ever lived. I've had the best friends in the world. But get together, be friends, and be neighborly like it used to be. Do for your neighbors, and they do for each other like it used to be years ago. That's the only thing I can think of. But I sort of think I think the younger generation, now I think a little different from them than a lot of people do. I see more and more, and I tell you, I think a whole lot of it is the men have taken a lot of more interest in the children. The men used to have children, but the wife did all the rest of the working and looking after them and so forth. But now that these younger generations, the men are just as close to the children, or some of them just as closer than the mothers are. And I think that's what's going to help a whole lot. I have a really, really bad heart, and it decides to quit whenever it gets ready to. It don't give me much warning. Sometimes it don't give me any warning at all. I just go plunk, and it's done that 4 times. But if I do, don't worry about it. That's what I tell everybody. Don't worry about it, because I'm going to go one of these days, and I'm just as ready to go as I'll ever be. But that's such a good way to go. I mean, I'd rather do that than I watched my husband die with cancer. Nobody should die like that. But I just learned to do the best I could with whatever my condition is at that time. You just take the matter. It's a matter of life or death. You can either enjoy it or you can make life what you want it to be. That's what I've always thought.
Right.
If you want fun, you'll have fun. If you're looking for trouble, you'll find it.